So I'd like to start with one of Mary Oliver's poems, not my own. So, but I thought it's called A Summer's Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I don't know how to pay attention or how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So I don't know, I was thinking, what, am I talking about something tonight? No, not really, except everything. And I was thinking, this is, I have been reading some of this life of Ajahn Mun, which is Ajahn Chah's teacher. And he had a teacher, Ajahn Bor, who, like all of them, they were forest dwellers. And so they lived and this is, of course, Southeast Asia. There's something very marvelous about the jungles there. They're dangerous in the sense that there are lots of snakes, tigers, elephants. And so a lot of the stories are about these teachers that encounter different wild creatures and their association with them, And one of the things about Ajahn Bor was he would, a lot of times he would go out at night and travel, and that's when a lot of the kind of wild creatures would show up. And it really created within the structure of the teachings something that, in our culture, we'd say a little bit far-fetched, but these are mystical cultures. They have, come to the Dharma, and then they have had this inspiration, which was passed down from generation to generation, that if they, in a sense, lived the right life, which was very controlled life in the sense that for them, they were simply, you could just say, beggars that would go out once a day. They weren't allowed to keep food, so they had to go every day and go out for alms round. And but one of the truths of it, and the Thais are very much into this, and the Burmese and Cambodians and Laotians and Vietnamese, is that these are they are mystics, and so there are these long kind of stories of their I know of ones living too that kind of lived with tigers, and that their respect for the nature and for the wild was very great. But also there was this mystical quality that is available. And I think sometimes we've been so, and I know for myself, I'm extremely domesticated now. I'm like an old cat or something, just wants to curl up uh, on the couch, you know. But in my early days, one of the great practices that these traditions came out of there, it's in Tibet, it's called Puk, and it's cave practice, where you would go and you would sit in caves. And a lot of these early Ajahns, that was their life. They went and lived in these caves. And then it was nature that taught you. There's the Dharma, which is in some ways, it's not complicated. It's really do no harm. Stick to some very simple rules. And the monks had more complicated rules. But that was really the essence of it, is live a simple life. And that in that simple life, that it was not based on, and I think that was one of the beautiful things about the monastic life, was it had certain kind of rules about materialism that it basically, in some sense, it just simply ignored it. And I'll say ignored it. You didn't, in the Theravadan tradition, they still to this day, they're not allowed to carry money. There's so many things they can't do that keeps them so protected from the world of desire that turns to greed, basically, and that it's not so much based on comfort as it is on the discipline of attending to that quest, or that pilgrimage, or that seeking that's an essence, or the kind of the power behind all these teachings. And I think this is true for all teachings and all traditions, is that people come to these teachings, in one sense, it's about bringing some solace. And I completely agree with that there can be a sense of, there can be such a great amount of anxiety just due to the amount of options and choices that we have, And I think it's wonderful to have these choices and options, but it's quite stressful, making all these decisions. And it's really where you can respect the monastic who they don't have to make those decisions, Therefore, they're really left with this, well, what is it that matters, And so this is really about a simple quest, that I suspect that all of us have some degree of interest, or maybe it's a need, for some very fundamental connection between our, you could say, your heart and the world around you. One of the complexities here is the teachings themselves are simple. You just to follow simple guidelines. But also, then I just want to take it one step farther, and it's why I was talking about the Puk practice, or the cave practices, is that there is a mystery of being here. And a lot of times in our, quote, modern culture, with the amount of choices we have, that we kind of miss the simplicity of this, and that there is more, it's not maybe the magic of, I was reading today of this monk sitting in a cave, and this tiger comes in, very friendly actually. And his process he goes through with this, big cat, and not knowing, and being far away from people, and the fact that the cat wasn't a problem. It was he and his mind. And so we don't have the cat so much, but we have other things that do that same thing, that in some sense come as, kind of the tiger to the cave. And then, and we have a very instinctual response, of we're either, we're afraid. It's really basically, that's the bottom emotion, is we're afraid. And so there is this fight, flight, or freeze response that's there. And a lot of this practice is the fact, and this is true, it's just in the world that happens. And these practices are really based on our ability to bring the kind of attention. And it's really why I like that body scan, in some sense, that it's a very much a body experience that is actual relationship to what your emotional response is to things. And if you can do it sometime when there's something hopefully not too terrible happens. That's not good to do it with real terrible things, but just things, little things, and that you notice that reaction, and that there's that fight, flee, freeze, or attack response. And we take that and we apply what we have been working with. And what is that? Well, it's actually, what is awareness? Awareness has to have first, it's very much about what's happening in the moment. So there's the Dharma is very much a body, you could say, as a somatic relationship, ultimately, to the mind and emotions. And so knowing that, then we actually can apply that primary reaction. And, the thing is that sometimes it's so easy to be swallowed by it. And I completely understand. And yet at the same time, a lot of this is it's not that you aren't going to react. It's how long does the reaction last, and do you act out of it, or do you allow it to, in a sense, be something that's informative to your nervous system, to your emotions, to your kind of views, your opinions, your storytelling of what's going on. Because what you can easily do is warp it, or you can actually take it down a couple notches, which is really what our practice must work with on some level. It would be nice to say, oh no, we just, like Mary Oliver says, we could just kind of sit and walk the field and, walk through the forest, and I like it. I like doing nothing all day. I think that's a fabulous practice, and but doing nothing doesn't mean that you aren't noticing. It means that, you're using from moment to moment some degree of, you could say, where one is not lost in thought, but is actually looking more at what is the whole experience. And the whole experience is the mind and heart and the body. So sometimes you have to put more attention on the body, because there's such a strong, particularly with emotional reactions, a strong contraction. and then we can attend to it by putting more attention on the body. There are other times where it's some pulling of the heart, and there has to be a noticing of the heart. And sometimes there is just this, you could say, between critical thinking, which is necessary, and our ability to, for me, it's this ability to step back and give it space, which is one of them, to me, one of the great things I've learned in this life is that if I can step back and give it space, it's not the same thing, that originally caught me either emotionally or that body fear reaction, So I'm going to go back to this because I think that's primary practice piece. But there's also a recognition here that's important to me, that somehow we have to see at the edge of our experience. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's almost like if you're seeing, there's a certain amount of periphery you have, and then there's things on the edges of that periphery. And those things we don't focus on. We actually can't, And when we don't focus on it, a lot of times it's where, maybe the word mystery, the word, I think the word magic is probably, I don't know if that's a right word because it does exist, but more that we start seeing that what our attention is based on our senses and our thoughts, and that there's more to it than that. That's actually a very, in a sense, you could say that's a limited view of what's happening. And so by putting attention more on the edges, and we can't look at the edges, we can only look straight ahead. But what's on the edges is it's sort of, in a sense, you could say it warps time a little bit, but it also gives that knows, or the awareness itself, it no longer freezes and identifies so strongly with the, if I can use the word, material world, the world of the senses, And it is part of this possibility that even though we live in a very concretized world, because what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what these are all, they are the way we live our life. But also there's more to life than what meets the eye or meets the sound or meets the feeling. And so in a way it's saying, oh, can you kind of expand in some ways that the knowing itself? Because and it's not, I have to correct here because I think it's easy. We have a thing called magical thinking, which has to do with things. And this is about perception. It's really the doors of perception that, in a sense, it allows that knows to be more inclusive to what it is that it's probably involved in on some level, that it's more than what it appears to be. And I think there's somewhat training in this, and part of it goes to this practice. That I was reading, because when I think of Ajahn Mun, I spent 3 months in Bari once just doing just this Budo. It's a mantra, and it's what he taught a lot of the village people. He didn't teach Vipassana as we know it, which is very much, it's a very much somatic practice, very specific, and kind of directly towards awakening. but just using Budo, just a mantra that was something that he could, in a sense, and the translation to the Thai was just repeating the word awake, 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 and I think that was always a little bit of the Budo between the kind of the Pali and the English, was that somehow English is very, it's a very concretized language. I think French is much more of a poetic language in that way. But English it's very good for mathematical things and being able to be specific and describe specific things. But this is what's, in a sense, kind of the in-between world. And that in-between world, I think poetry is one of the great, it sometimes can bend a little of that, that concretization between the knowing and the sense door itself, what it's experiencing. And, that's a very direct thing. And we immediately know something about it. And what I'm trying to point here is a place that we don't know, so it's actually, we can't know it. And yet it exists, and it can actually, it's there in the corner of your awareness at all times, And I know this is kind of out there a little bit. It's not, because so much suffering happens in the believing how we think it is, and this is saying, no, there's a way of maybe expanding that to a point where maybe things aren't the way they seem. And maybe there is more to what's there than I see, And again, this is, you can say Budo, you can use Om Mani Padme Hum, you can use any means to kind of settle the system. But settling the system is not the seeing. The seeing is that it doesn't buy into, what is seen or what is thought, even what is felt, that all of that, in a sense, is, and I can say, it's not necessarily a distortion. It's just not the whole thing. It's like saying, oh, no, you're only seeing a piece of something that's much bigger. And the idea here is that we do this training so we can see a little bit of what's bigger, and not just that. And not that there's anything wrong with that, which there isn't. I mean, that is conventional, necessity for us to run our lives. But it also doesn't necessarily bring us awakening or happiness. And to me, ultimately, how do we do that? Because otherwise, none of the things that are going to happen in your life, they're all going to end. I mean, really end, and you're going to die. And it's going to be like, oh, what was this about again? Did somebody tell me how it works? Oh, no, I had to figure this out for myself. You have to figure out for yourself, But it's also, how can I change my perception so I don't keep getting lost in you could say the conventional, because it is, and that somehow the conventional is not enough. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's, then it's just simply body function, and not that there's anything wrong with that, because we need it to work right. And we need to be able to, in a sense, kind of, I think there is that thing of living our vision on some level, which means a lot of times, if that's what's there for you this round, that you have to follow it, and you will suffer for that vision. I know, I can testify to it, and but there was always this chance of also saying, okay, that's what I'm doing, but there's also more to how I'm seeing. And that's really what I'm trying to kind of point out tonight. Well, how are you seeing? Are you just seeing in the conventional, in the sense of kind of a black and white movie of good and bad, happy, right and wrong, all that? Or is there this ability? It's really where the capacity for an awareness, that's not tethered. It actually has the capacity to go beyond, I can say it kind of steps on this edge between the known and the unknown, and between the perceived and the perceiver. It's like, oh, can I kind of step out of that, of my conventional world, and touch? And what are you touching? Well, you're touching something you can't know, but you can, in a sense, you can sense that there's more there. So that's maybe what we could say is the mysterious. It's not something that can be known, and it brings great solace to a human being, because if you could just know it, and what we know about what is known is there are cycles. It's really just cycles of suffering. And sometimes it's fine, the food's good, everything's, sleep's great, everything, and then it's not. And so we are subject to that, and yet we are not that. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We are not that, and yet, as a human being, we're subject to it. So I hope that's helpful, and if it's not, don't worry about it. That's the idea. Just don't worry about it, But the knowing, has to be able to take in what's not known, And so at first, one of the things I know for me when I first started kind of recognizing that I was trying to push the edges is, what was it that I was pushing? Oh, I was pushing a thing called fear. So I would get near the edge and I was afraid. I would contract, but then I realized that the conventional view of it was, all I could see was exactly what the Buddha was pointing at, that it was these cycles of suffering. And he simply said, oh, we're more than that. Oh, really? Well, how to do that? And this is where our capacity to, it's like they say, you've seen one tree, you've seen them all. This is like saying, no, every moment and every, tree, everything can either take you into the, what use is it? Or is it someplace that I can use to expand beyond the confines of the knowing itself? It's always tough to talk about this, but I think I also know that I don't have anything else to teach you. that I've kind of come to the end of my, I know all the conventional stuff. I can do that over and over again. I've done it hundreds, if not now thousands of times. And I know ultimately that if you follow these teachings, I know where they go. And all those before me knows where they go. And it is maybe more about the view you have than just an experience. You know, the experience confirms, but it's not. This is actually one of the languages was of the perfection of view, that this was actually the Buddha's teachings was the perfection of view. And that view takes all the kind of the basic teachings as a foundation. And then from that foundation, then there is more the kind of the, it is kind of a, mysterious or mystical or unconventional or beyond convention that we can begin to expand our sense doors to not just buy what they experience, but the fact that they actually have the capacity, in a sense, to kind of touch a bigger world. How's that? So I don't know where we are. I get lost, time's always questionable. So do you have any questions, or I should say, do you have any answers?
John, it's Marie.
I see Jen. Is that who I see? Jen, was that you?
I think Marie just piped up. Why don't I go after Marie?
Okay, I don't know where Marie is. Oh, there she is. Okay, she's.
Hi, John. Thanks,
Hi.
Jen.
You are just an angel.
I guess, how words or understanding using certain words. When I was listening to you, I was thinking, okay, it reminds me how, or when I get reminders of catching myself in moments of contraction or fear, and practicing within that moment of, attempting to soften. It's kind of one of the words that helped me soften.
Great word.
Expand. And then another word that often helps is letting go of control. How there's, I think, just any little thing there for me can be a tendency of trying to control or manipulate, but it's that contraction and expansion. That's what came up when I was listening to you. Is that kind of what you're meaning when you're saying, the edge or perception, just learning to soften and expand and experience?
Yes. And, one of my things is when it comes to the thinking and the sense doors and the feeling and the contractions is, to me, my little mantra is let it be. I'd like to let it go. Of course, that's whatever, that's the conventional, but to let it be.
Mm-hmm.
And that somehow when we let it be, then there's a sense of ease or relaxing that then allows there to be more space. And that, to me, this is what we're talking, it's that relaxing that allows that contracting to soften and open and let it be, because it's not like you can let it go. I always, I think you've probably all heard me say this before, letting go still has desire in it, because there's something that we want to let go of. And therefore there is usually some kind of contraction around it. But if you can let it be, then the inevitable result of letting it be is a biochemical process called letting go. But it's not something we did. It's something that happened because we essentially didn't interfere with it. If that makes sense. This is I also very Taoist or Buddhist,
Mhm.
It's not the
It
act.
sounds like an acceptance too.
Well, that's also
Kind of.
another word for it. It's,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
it actually is a deep acceptance
And then it
being
sounds like
gone.
a good time investigating, like investigating what brought this contraction, or observing.
Well,
Yeah.
that's very Western, is somehow that you have to know its origin or something and what it is. And I'm not saying that that isn't right, but I'm just saying that I guess I'm more interested in freedom, in
Mhm.
how do you free yourself from not kind of resolving or knowing where it came from, or
Mhm.
and not that, and sometimes if when we don't know where something comes from, we repeat it. But
Mhm.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying actually, if you can learn to let it go, you know where it came from. And your tendency is not to repeat, even though we're really good at that, you know, amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I know I said I was next in line, but I think your conversation with Marie was really illuminating for where I was coming from. So thank you.
Great, Jen. Anyone else? Well, it's funny these days, I'm not so, it's been interesting, the fact that, I was planning on being in Thailand now and not here. And it's kind of disappointing, but the same way that, with this, and Asia's a real mess right now. And we were trying to open the center and everything and change. So this Delta has come along and, I was thinking back to, I came back March the 26th, April, that there was such a contraction going on. And there's a little bit of that contraction again going on in our culture, simply because now even the, those of us vaccinated, there's now a little more question that of what's going on. So we're back into the mystery of, how this is happening, which also kind of brings us to the center. And the center, we're um, it's a center. You can't. I don't want to. And I do believe in science, believe them, and that we're going to have our supposed soft opening is probably going to be stretched out. So,
John,
yes.
hi. My name is Moshami, and I'm sorry I don't have my camera on. I looked horrible. I'm very, very tired. I am hoping to come to Mountain Streams when you open. I've met you a few times at some of the Bay Area centers, so I may not be familiar to you from this Sangha. The reason I'm so tired is that I just spent a few days at Abhayagiri,
Hmm.
and this is just a share, and I
Please.
just wondering what you make of it. So after, I was there for 3 nights, and I worked very diligently towards my spiritual practice, and was really trying to free myself, I guess. And as I left the monastery grounds and drove away down the road yesterday, 2 realizations that were really 2 insights that really came out of they weren't from my thinking mind at all. It just kind of seemed to arise. One was, this voice came and said, "Where are you trying to go? It's right here, like it's right here. Why are you trying so hard to get somewhere?" That was the message. And the other was, I've really taken to heart the idea of trying to die before I die. And the other insight, the other voice said, "But you're alive." Right now you're alive, and life is a celebration. And it was really quite amazing to hold these different dialectics. It just suddenly felt like I was holding so many dialectics, between life and death, and male and female, and time and timelessness, and effort and letting go. And I just laughed. I laughed for a good long while on my drive. So anyway, I just thought I'd share and see what you might think of that.
Well, first of all, just, the fact that you, first of all, just honor the seeker in you that actually would take the effort to go and spend the time at Abhayagiri. And it's, the seeker is always disappointed. Just know that. The seeker is always disappointed. And yet it's a necessary force that gives us some sense of, it's like you were saying, the dialectics that between the kind of life and death, and between pain and happiness. We have to have some means of in a sense, if I can use the language, pushing the envelope, which you have just done, and that there is insight that comes out of it. So first of all, great respect for your journey. And unfortunately, I think of the many times I have sought and been excited and disappointed, but I kept doing it. And so I'd say to you, keep that seeker alive, even though the seeker is just something that in the end you'll have to get rid of, but and where you are, it is a means, and it will show you a little bit about the extremes. And I don't know how else to learn. I spent a lot of my life in and out of monasteries and extremes of, caves and all kinds of stuff. And now I'm happy just to sit here. But I encourage you to keep searching, and there's no right answer. There's just experiences that give you a little more, what is it? It's a little like a little wider view of things. So good going.
Thank you so much. I feel incredibly fortunate to have guides and chaperones and wise hearts and minds like yourself, who can point us towards the mystery. So,
Well, it's all we have. The rest of this in some ways is, there is enlightenment experiences, and I can completely support and believe in them and know them. And at the same time, it's what the Buddha called the perfection of view, of how we're seeing things, and can we see a little bit more of that mystery in our everyday lives, and I think that's where I used to have to do special things to get things, and thinking I had to, climb Mount Fuji or something, It's something that was extra special. I did a lot of that. And I like the language, and I'll say this to you. I love the language that comes out of the Zen tradition more, the ordinary, that somehow all the seeking only ends in a sense of the ordinary, that the wealth of everything is actually in the ordinary. And yet, we seek these extremes to teach us, to give us perspective, to give us kind of maybe a wider view of things. So congratulations.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I'm going to do a little metta here to close. And then I don't know if it's Jen or Marcia, but Jen's going to do a few announcements. So just to take a moment, and I want you just to feel the, maybe just to feel the limitation. There's a body, there's this story you have, there are these relations you have, and that you can turn your attention to your good heart. And this good heart is principally, it is for you, first and foremost, that you can turn and say, oh, I am a human like everyone else. I have suffered like everyone else. And I can care for myself because I know that. And I have felt that. And therefore, being that I am, and it's not narcissistic in any way. It's really that it is just the simple truth that I can love and care for myself in a healthy way. And that as I take care of myself, then I have this ability to first just to see into the kind of the good heart of the world around us, the trees and the deer and the squirrels and the tigers and the birds, and kind of this great life, this great mystery. And that because we are that love and we can extend that love, then we have a power. And that power is to extend beyond the confines of this little story, this little I, me, mine, this little, in a sense, a little life. And that we can extend out to beings known to us and unknown to us, that beings may benefit from our journey, our seeking, our seeing, our feeling, our capacity to help ourselves and help others for our benefit and the benefit of beings everywhere. And again, if there's any power or energy or merit that is created through our coming together, that we extend it out to others that they may benefit from our time together. May all beings everywhere be happy.
Good evening, everyone.